Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, people of all colors, folks of all neurodiversities, welcome to Speaking of the Spectrum. This is an autism podcast for everyone. Whether you are autistic, whether you're a parent of someone who is autistic, or know someone who is autistic, or friends with someone who is autistic, or not even related to anyone who is autistic or on the autism spectrum, but just looking to tune into a couple of pals, having a good chat and a good conversational gem to take away, I guarantee this podcast is for you. Who am I? I am Shahrukh Sultan, the man with the plan from Pakistan. I am Autism Society Greater Hudson Region Vice President currently. I also do some day job, something through the day hours as a project manager, getting stuff through pipelines and meeting deadlines, that kind of fun stuff. And most importantly, my role is as an autism dad, which is what brought me here, of a beautiful 12-year-old boy who loves to be energized during the day and sometimes doesn't sleep at night. And that's why I need coffee and that's why I'm wired. And then I don't do this alone because I have, if I call him Sideshow Bob, that makes me Krusty the Clown. But my Sideshow Bob is this man who is, likes to call himself a human Swiss Army knife. I think of him as a human Energizer Bunny because every time I see him, it's like a bolt of lightning, whether it's in this podcast or not. He's not so much of an average Joe Templin because he has a plethora of skills that I will, if I start repeating, it'll probably take all of 25 minutes of this episode. But Joe, thanks for being on this journey with me, and welcome back to Speaking of the Spectrum.
Shahrukh, this is always my favorite time of the week when we get a chance to sit down, kibitz a little bit, and be able to have some fun together while doing good for our community and beyond. So,
and just be chaotic neutral. Just be chaotic neutral. Joe and I both have the privilege of being on the Autism Society Greater Hudson Region, which is very important to know today because our guest is the current Executive Director, Nathan Briggs. Welcome to Speaking of the Spectrum.
Good evening, Shahrukh. Good evening, Joe. It is my distinct pleasure to be here this evening speaking with you.
Every time I talk to Nathan, I feel like I'm speaking to royalty. He's so well spoken. That's why I wanted to have him on the podcast.
He's got the regal look.
The
and
regal
everything.
is the word. Nathan Regal Briggs. Nathan, thanks for being part of our site. Thanks for executing things in a way that moves us in this direction of the future. Right? Mm-hmm. I really want to know. Every time I have a guest, I ask them, "What is your origin story? Sure. Where did it all start? How I know the way of how it led to you to autism, but why is this cause so important to you?"
So it's a great question because ultimately that is it's why are we all here together doing what we're doing. But before I answer the question, I just want to start first by expressing my gratitude to you, the two of you in particular, for choosing to volunteer your time to be a part of Autism Society Greater Hudson Region. All the things that I do and that we do as an organization would not be possible without your generosity of your time and of your resources and being able to do what it is that we do. And ultimately, that's part of my answer, is to be able to be a part of something like this, to be able to connect with you and people like you and being able to dedicate ourselves to something that is truly greater than who we are as individuals. And that makes me so full of pride and gratitude that I always try to start every conversation of these types with a thank you, because it's so important what we do. And I just have an immense amount of gratitude. So my why. So I do not have a child on the autism spectrum. I do not have a sibling who is. I don't have any direct connection to what it is, to our community. But what I do have is Tony. And Tony was this gentleman that I met when I was just a kid. My mom was a nurse in one of the old institutional settings that we had in New York State at the time, back in the 70s and the 80s. And she understood it was not okay how we were going about our business and being able to help support people that were identified as being disabled, and I have a younger brother. She would bring us to her workplace at Wasatch Developmental Center down in the Harlem Valley, just south of here. And frankly, it was a really scary place, especially as a 9-year-old standing outside of a Grant Hall. They called it the Hill because it was at the top of the hill. It literally had gargoyles over the doors before you would go in. And here I am standing as a 9-year-old looking at gargoyles, hearing what's coming out and seeing what's coming out and smelling what's coming out. And I'm just like, oh my God, I don't want to go in. And she's like, no, you're coming in and you're going to meet who it is that I support. And so she brought us in and she introduced us to the people that she was supporting and Grant Hall. And my brother and I, we connected with Tony, who was a gentleman who lived in the institution, and he only wanted to do one thing. He just wanted to leave. He just wanted to leave and have a home of his own and be able to live his life on his terms. That's all he wanted to do. And so my mom bent some of the rules that they had at the time, started to bring him while she was on duty back to our home to have dinner with us as a family. So he actually had the opportunity to come out and actually experience something other than that. And it was great. And he loved it. And it was really a really important thing. Unfortunately, it got to the point where Tony realized that he didn't want to go back and made it very clear that he did not want to go back. And so an incident occurred that from which my mom was censured because she was doing something that she wasn't supposed to be doing. And the administration of this institution made sure that Tony never left again.
Ouch.
Until he died. And so I didn't realize it had a huge impact on me as a kid. I didn't realize just how much until later on in life, and figure out like, what is it that I want to do to make a difference in my life, with my life in the world. And as I sort of navigated that, I remembered and really recalled Tony. And so he has been my North Star since stepping into this field almost 20 years ago as a DSP, and using him as sort of my guidepost and like, what I'm about to do, the decision I'm about to make, the thing that we're trying to do here, would it have benefited him?
Right. Where is it helping the Tony out there right now?
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a great perspective and a great goal.
It has been incredibly helpful in being able to make sure that my moral compass is aligned exactly with what it is that we're here to do. And so that is what has brought me to this field, to this position, and to this terrific organization to be able to work together on doing what it is that we're here to do.
So talking about what it is that we're here to do, you know, you came into an organization that was a little bit in flux, and we've had some changes and we're going to continue to have some changes, but talk about the vision. So Sharuk and I were arguing earlier about when we should set the vision for. So 2030, because it's a nice round number,
Sure.
6-ish years down the road.
Just 6 years, Dave.
That's don't blink, it'll be there just like that.
Yeah. So, you know, where do you want to take the Autism Society by the end of the decade?
So where I would like to see ASGHR end up. So what do we do? Well, what we do is we have our 5 core services that we're obligated to through our affiliation agreement with the national organization.
And those 5 are?
So as per our agreement with Autism Society America, we are obligated to provide information and referral for our community to be able to connect people with services, tying us directly to our mission. We are here to advocate for our community. We are here to educate both within our community and without our community, or to the community as a whole, to be able to educate people about autism and what that means. It also includes that we are here to be able to help promote support groups so that people have a community to choose to opt into if they wish to. And then also we have our community events, which I'm very happy to talk about. It's a couple of days removed from the really terrific event that we had with our Walk for Autism at Central Park in Schenectady on Saturday.
Can I just pause you for a second?
Please.
Like, you know, Nathan's not a paid actor. He's actually the executive director, and we actually represent a real organization with real 5 core values. So anybody who thinks we're just like Joe and I are just a couple of dudes posing to be directors, that's right there. You should know we're meant to be taken seriously.
Yep, absolutely.
Please continue.
Yeah, absolutely. So those are those 5 areas that we want to and really need to be able to focus on and thinking about how do we actually meet our mission. And right now, we have a coverage area of 21 counties here in Eastern New York, which is a huge area. Yeah. And with the nature of the service of our environment and the way that we are resourced and the way that we as a society have chosen at this point to be able to help support organizations such as ours, our resources are really constrained. And so the amount of impact that we're able to make on such a broad area right now is not nearly sufficient to be able to meet the need that actually exists within those 21 counties and with our communities in those 21 counties. So in 6 years, what we need and what we want to do is be able to try to identify those specific areas where we can start to have tangible impact, to be able to demonstrate that we are actually able to provide tangible value to our community in those 5 areas, and use those as our proof of concept to be able then to extend out opportunities for others to participate with us and invest in us to be able to amplify our impact, to be able to take that demonstration that we can have an impact, help support us in being able to broaden and deepen that impact across our catchment and potentially and hopefully across the state and further as well, because ultimately the needs that we are here to meet are not specific to the 21 counties that we are here, that serve as our catchment for ASGHR. Those needs are universal. So if we can help demonstrate to others how to go about the business of actually meeting the mission of connecting people to the resources that they need to live a full life and be able to help them understand how they can do that in theirs, well, then that would be wonderful. So to be able in these next 6 years to be able to demonstrate that proof of concept and be able to broaden and deepen our impact within the 21 counties while exploring how we can expand our impact, that would be fantastic.
Good answer.
That's the answer. Like I was going to ask, what's the low-hanging fruit from all of that?
So the low-hanging fruit for all of that is looking at where we've already received support in some specific areas. And one of our honored guests at the walk on Saturday was Assemblyman Angela Santa Barbara, who I believe is a previous guest when this airs. Yep. And Assemblyman Santa Barbara has been really generous in supporting our organization with tangible funds to be able to have an impact specifically in the area of supporting people in our community in success in college. So that is an area. I just had a meeting this morning, actually, in our lower part of our catchment, sort of the newer area that we're here covering at ASGHR, at SUNY New Paltz. Has a follow-up meeting with the Disability Resource Center there in looking at a specific program that we may be able to help support them in supporting registered students within the college community who are on the spectrum looking to succeed, looking at how do we help set them up with success in classes, how do we help them prepare themselves to enter the workforce upon graduation, and really as importantly, and one that's often missed and not thought about in a college setting, how do we help people on the spectrum integrate into the community itself? Yeah. How do we help support them in a dorm? How do we help support them having to have a shared room maybe for the first time in their lives with somebody that, as a stranger that they don't know? How do we set them up for success in that? How do we help them understand and identify what are some community activities that they can engage in that helps add to that college experience that ultimately we would like people to be able to experience in the growth of themselves and develop themselves into adulthood. So we're exploring how we may be able to help them do that within the context of support such as that as we see from Assemblyman Santa Barbara.
We talked about it before. There's such a huge gap right now, right? Like in that transition phase that like those individuals aging out, going into the college year. We had Prion, a few episodes ago talking about her institution transitions that does that. So it's phenomenal that we actually have that's part of our low-hanging fruit plan, which is great. Yeah. You didn't mention we covered 21 counties in New York State, and New York State is a melting pot of all kinds of different cultures. And when you have different cultures, you have different languages. So it'd be good to know, Joe, if there's any different meanings of the word autism in different languages, something we've been doing this season, but do you have a different language
I have one last one. And okay. I'm going to Gaelic and Scotch Irish, Watakas. Which means self-oriented. Okay, so that internal focus in a lot of ways. And one of the things that I wanted to bring up, because I've spent a lot of time trying to research this, and 95+% of the languages that have a term for autism or autistic person are derived from the Greek that we have in English, autism. No, autismo, autisma. And most of Western Europe, Eastern Europe, it is spread because autism was such a recent diagnosis. I mean, the disease, if you want to call it that, but the syndrome was only really documented about 100 years ago. And so different cultures, because of the harshness of the environment or the culture, might not have had individuals who were on the spectrum given the opportunity to succeed at all. And so that's one of the reasons why many cultures and languages do not even have a word for it. And so have just basically adopted or stolen the original term. And that's the reason why it is so far across the country, the world, in terms of being called just autism at this point.
Well, self-oriented.
Yes. So self-oriented is the Irish term. And we talked about how James Joyce and several other great Irishmen were on the spectrum. So,
Right.
and wearing my green jacket to represent today.
Well, that's great to learn. Like it always comes back to that self, right? And I like the orientation piece because it's almost like an external orientation too. So you have to align yourself with the person that's autistic, right? Like sort of be at their level, communicate with their communication style, and then help them bring into the real world, right? Like, do you have any thoughts on like how that's
Yeah, so that is interesting. So first of all, thanks for sharing that about the Gaelic. A couple of things that I would respond to in that. First, one, I look at autism not as a disease, but as a condition. Like it's just an attribute. Yes, it's an attribute of a person. Yeah. And it is interesting that the terminology is used in the vast majority of the languages that actually have a term within the language does emanate from the Greek. And that would suggest, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but it would suggest that other areas of the world that have a more communal community setting, the fact that they don't, I find is really interesting. Like I'm curious, like, is there an Asian term in Asian languages? Is there a term for it?
We do Japanese and Chinese, right?
Japanese, Chinese, Korean. There's each have one, and pretty consistently across the world, self is a component of it.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Pretty consistent.
Yeah, it is very. I wonder if it's skewed towards those cultures, such as quote unquote Western civilizations that are
there's
more
one of the African languages. It translates as Western disease.
Really interesting. That's fascinating.
That. Yeah, imagine that.
Really interesting.
So my next question for you, Nathan, this is going to tie into our Adam Project thing, and I'll explain Nathan what Adam Project is. Well, he probably knows. You watched the episodes before. Good. So, are you a dog person or a cat person?
Yes.
Good answer. Good answer. No, but really, okay, dogs, right? It's got to be dogs.
No, it would be both.
It's both? Okay.
Right. The cat I had for 16 years would insist about the fact that I had to account for him as well.
So where I'm going with this is, I'm glad you didn't just say just cats, because that would have ruined my setup. Chaotic neutral people here, speaking of the spectrum at every level. So we have a section called the Adam Project. Now, if you're a Ryan Reynolds fan, he made a movie of time travel called the Adam Project, and we're trying to desperately get his attention. So far, it's responded, but we'll get there. With our growing fan base, we'll get there.
You know, I think maybe next season, you and I should dress up like Deadpool and Green Lantern.
Not
and,
Wolverine.
do an entire episode dressed that way to get his attention.
It should be the Halloween episode.
I think we should.
So
you might also wish to dress in his professional soccer team's uniforms as well.
Yeah,
that's possible. Yes, exactly. Yeah. That might catch his attention as well.
Yeah. No, we want to focus on the bad stuff.
Okay.
So the Green Lantern, CGI outfit. So the Adam Project is autism dads and moms, right? And it's where we're Joe and I are slowly but surely trying to build this database or some kind of information wiki page or something of tips from everyday moms and dads like ourselves. So when we were at the walk the other day, Saturday, our Autism Society, we have this walk every fall. Families come out, and we have a whole bunch of providers that come. One of the provider tables there was for service dogs, and I'm a dog person. Unfortunately, I can't have dog inside the house. Right? There's many reasons to that. Mostly being my wife, but we have our hands full with 2 kids, so it'd be hard to look after a dog. But what I would love to have is a therapy dog to come and spend some time with my kids. I know my older son who's on the spectrum, responds really well to that. So one of the things we did for the walk was we found somebody who's very graciously dresses up in a nice costume as the Ghostbusters. He brings his dog out.
Lilius.
Yeah, he was wonderful. He was there at the walk, and he has his car that's even it's a Corolla, but he has it set up as the Ecto One. But his dog Lily Girl is a golden retriever who's so friendly and so awesome, the therapy dog, and everybody just loves petting her. And they really add like a nice, they elevate the experience of a walk in our 5K events. So anyway, when I saw that table there, I went and asked like, hey, do you have what other services out there for dogs? So there's a few out there that they had in this little chit for. I'll just read out of for those parents out there looking to get a therapy dog for your kid. There's canine.org, which is the Canine Companion Chapters in Albany. Look them up. There's NEADS, NEADS in Massachusetts, which is a nonprofit organization that trains and places service dogs for adults, children, veterans, hearing dogs, and autistic children. Their website is neads.org. And then there's this is a pretty big one, Assistance Dogs International. It's actually assistancedoginternational.org. And that's they're if they must be big because their URL is pretty long, but but yeah. So if you're looking to get, I think kids, autistic people, individuals in general, and the kids, I think their reaction to petting dogs and just petting animals in general is very therapeutic. I remember my son when he was maybe 5 or 6 years old, we took him to a petting zoo locally. And I had a real fear of animals and touching animals, but because of him, I kind of overcame it. And he was touching the camels and the deer and the goats and everything, and it made him happier. So I really, maybe at some point I'll try to get like a dog that can just come for a few hours a day. But
so that definitely resonates. So I had both dogs and cats. I had our first dog. Her name was Scout. She was the nicest dog I've ever met, and she just loved people. And learning from my mom, when I was a DSP, I used to break the rules, and I'd bring my team over to my house while I was on duty, so they could see Scout, and Scout would jump up into the van, and she would go around to everyone would pet her, and they were just every time they'd be, when do we get to see Scout again? When do we get to go see Scout again? But so that certainly resonates, and certainly that would be wonderful for people to access those types of things to be able to help bring. And
notice
joy.
Nathan said that he breaks the rules, so he's a chaotic pirate like us.
There you go.
If that's what's necessary to be able to help move the needle in a direction, then we need to do that.
And justifies the means, guys.
Something like that.
Something like that. So speaking of people who are pirates and heroes and what they like, Joe, do you have a hero of the day, or are we?
Well, I actually wanted to hear about Nathan's hero, but I think he's already told us a lot about it with Tony.
Absolutely, he is my hero.
So he sort of
every
ruined
day.
our setup a little bit.
Well, he also saved us time because I'm a project manager looking to save time everywhere I can. I'm like, he saved us time.
Well, my MPA clients would be very proud of me that I achieved both effectiveness and efficiency just like that without even intending to do so.
Awesome. No, I really appreciate this trick because I never looked at it as a hero as someone who has passed, right? And I know this is really emotional as well, but it's also very heartwarming and inspirational, right? Because there's someone who you knew as a kid, and to this day they have an impact on your life. Now your life is having an impact on everyone else's life because here you are, leading our organization into that direction.
I think about Tony every day, and it's a mix of both joy, a little bit of sorrow because he never was able to achieve what he wanted to achieve, but knowing that he serves as an inspiration for being able for us to do what it is that we do. I'm truly grateful for it.
I would say, go far as to say, we would only be so lucky as Tony to have an impact even after we're gone.
I agree.
That's what I would say.
That's a real hero right there.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sherwood.
For sure. Before we let you go, Nathan, I want you to have our limited edition coffee mug by Speaking of the Spectrum.
I have gotten mugged.
You have gotten mugged. We mugged you. Welcome to the live mugging, people. But that is yours to take and keep.
Thank you so much. It is my distinct pleasure and honor to accept. Yep. Thank you.
Do not leave that in the kitchen. Put that on your desk where people can see it. But Joe's going to tell those who are envying that mug right now in its gorgeous cyan color on how they can get their hands on one. Joe, what is
this wonderful mug that Nathan and I are both showing off can be yours for a $500 donation at the website, which Shrook is
ASGHR.org/podcast.
Fantastic. A worthy investment.
It is.
And if you're local, Joe and I will fill it up with hot coffee and bring it to you and sip it with you, so you can have a little chaotic, neutral energy as you sip the coffee. Nathan, thanks so much for your time and helping us lead this organization into a future that's hopefully going to stabilize things and make things much better for our individuals who are on the spectrum, and for those of us that are not specifically on the spectrum and who are looking to build that world. How are we going to get there, Joe?
There's only one way, and it's what we've been doing all season long. We just have to keep speaking of the spectrum.
Beautiful. Take care, guys. See you next episode, which is going to be our wrap up for this season. Bye.